Hi, this is Ryan with Astrology by Ryan, and the following video discusses the topics of guns and gun violence. So I just wanted to lay that out at the beginning. I don't show any images or videos, and I'm not going to go over any specific charts of individuals or individual events or shootings or anything like that. I'm going to be laying out the topics of guns and even recreational use of guns and firearms in the zodiacal system of houses and signs and planetary phases and aspects and all of that. Again, no images, no videos, but please take care of yourself. If this is a sensitive topic or triggering in any way, you don't need to watch this video. Go ahead and take care of yourself. Also, I did want to briefly mention why I've chosen to do this particular topic. And the reason is that there's been a lot of gun violence recently, and I have personally been affected by gun violence. And I think there's probably still a lot there that I need to heal through myself. And as this topic was swimming around in the media and I tried to avoid it, I kept hearing about different acts of gun violence, and I thought that this will be a way for me to kind of connect with the topics in a way that helps me to distance myself from the topics and allows me to more directly see and understand the topics of guns and gun violence and gun usage when looking at astrological charts. So hopefully my exploration into this is helpful for others. And again, please take care of yourself. If this topic is disturbing, you don't need to watch this. Go ahead and take care of yourself. Just to set the stage for what's going to be coming up on this topic, I'm going to try to cover dealing with the angularity of planets. So how house angularity impacts the topics of guns. We're also going to be looking at surveying all 12 houses together and how that's going to be connected with guns, the use of guns, gun violence. Then we're going to be looking at each zodiacal sign. So I'll kind of like do a survey of the 12 signs. And then I even started kind of like making notes around the 36 decans. And so I have some things to talk about in the 36 decans that will also probably be a separate video. And then looking at each of the 7 traditional planets relative to gun usage and gun violence, another video. We're going to be looking at how to read aspects. So we have all the different aspects, and how do we look at aspects and the topics of guns and gun usage. Then I'm going to also be covering modality. Then we'll be looking at how the sect of the planets impacts topics when we're reading a chart for topics around guns. Then I'm also have some notes on planetary speed and direction, solar phase and how solar phase contributes to the topic of guns. And finally, I thought of like tying it all together with a survey or an overall summary of how things like assassination, murder, gun violence is relevant for the overall, for all of those. It's kind of like a summary overview of everything. And I'll create a separate playlist that's for this specific topic so that all the videos will be easy to get. And I'm also going to be creating a mailing list so you can sign up on the mailing list when all of the videos are finished and released on this particular series. I'm then going to create a PowerPoint and a document that has all this information in it. And if you sign up on that mailing list, when that set of slides and that document is available, then you'll be able to get notified of when that's available if you're interested in that. So the link to the sign up list will be in the description of each of the videos for this particular series. So feel free to go ahead and take a look for that. All right, so let's look at house angularity and the topic of guns and gun usage. We're going to try to understand how firearms and explosions relative to firearms and the use of firearms can be understood through the different angularity aspects of the houses. Traditionally, houses are categorized into angular, succedent, and cadent. Each category reflects different levels of power, stability, and influence in the chart on the astrological themes. We look at the angular houses first, and the angular houses are typically very prominent in the chart. They are the first house, the fourth house, the seventh, and the 10th houses. An angular house, if we look at the philosophy really just at a high level, the angular houses are considered the most powerful and active houses. They correspond to what are known as the cardinal points in the chart, and those are typically thought of as some of the most personal points in the chart to a person. And those are the ascendant, the imam quelli or imam celli, and that's often abbreviated IC, the descendant, and the midheaven. So we're really looking at the first house is where the ascendant is, the seventh house is where the descendant is, the fourth house is where the imam celli is at, or the nadir, and the 10th house is where the midheaven is, or the MC or medium celli. The angular houses are positioned on the pivotal points in the chart. So we talk about those points 1, 4, 7, and 10 being the pivots of the chart because they represent the quadrants and they represent the beginnings, and they're associated with immediate actions and direct impacts. Succedent houses are the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and the 11th. And the succedent houses, we see them positioned relative to the angular houses, where in zodiacal order, so if you're going counterclockwise, the succedent house is the next house counterclockwise from the angular house. So if the first house, we go counterclockwise, we get to the second house. The second house is the succedent house to the angular house. And this is because it is going to succeed to that position as the day moves on. Succedent houses provide stability and support. They are positioned relative to the angular house in such a way that they signify resources and the in a way kind of the aftermath of the actions initiated by the angular houses. These the succedent houses are linked to maintaining and building upon what is started in the angular houses. So it's like we could think of like if there was a king or a queen, and then they have an heir to the throne, the king or queen dies, and the heir succeeds them and carries on that legacy and then expands upon it. So that's the succedent house. The cadent houses are the 3rd, 6th, the 9th, and the 12th houses. Cadent houses are on the other side of the angle. So if we're looking at the angular angle, the angular pivot, which is like the angular quadrant is 3 houses together, the angular pivot or the angular quadrant for the first house is 1, 12, and 2. So for the first quadrant, the angle of self, we have the 12th house, the first house, and the second house. The 12th house is the cadent house, and cadent, it means to be falling away from something. And because they're falling away from the angle, They're kind of like where we can think of like if the king or queen dies, if there's a if we imagine an afterlife that they're going to, and that afterlife is the cadent house, well, their ghost is going to have less impact on the things that are happening in their kingdom relative to their heir, which has just succeeded it. So the cadent house is falling away. It's representing what's passed away and still has an impact, but it has a less power relative to the angle itself. Cadent houses often represent transitions, preparations, and indirect influences. They signify areas where themes are more diffused, subtle, where they support the angular and succedent houses by providing groundwork and transitions. So when we're looking at the angular houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, these are the most powerful and active angles. These are the most powerful active houses. And when we look at the impact on guns and gun violence, these can be when those houses are indicated in the charts for the individual or the actions that are taking place, they can represent the immediate actions and the direct impact of the experience itself. They can signify the influence and the manifestations in a very strong and present way. It can speak to the personal involvement of the individual with firearms. It can speak about direct confrontations. If we're talking about a large event, it might speak to the circumstances of the event itself or the shooter. Of those topics really come through when those houses are signified in the chart that's being read. For instance, if it's the 4th house, it's going to be like protection, which is a really strong theme. It's like protection of the home. It can also talk about our public responses. If it's a 10th house, it could be like public or career related violence. Like I remember long ago when I was living in Honolulu, there was a shooting at Xerox, and that's kind of like a career related violence, so that we might see 10th house significations for an event like that. The succedent houses again are 2, 5, 8, and 11. These houses tend to provide stability and support, and so when we look at their impact on guns and gun use and gun violence, they can represent the aftermath of the action. So what happens after, if it's an act of violence and shooting, it could represent the aftermath of the shooting. If we're talking about hunting, it could represent what happens after the hunt. If we're talking about any kind of recreational use of, going to a gun range or something like that, it can talk about what's happening after those events. So, if we're doing different kinds of readings like horary or natal readings or elections or even analysis of an inceptional chart for something that happened already, that we're looking at the chart for that moment, those different kinds of themes might come up relative to that. The succedent houses can also be much more indicated for the recreational use of firearms. The succedent houses can also be an indication of fatality and fatal consequences, and the kinds of transformations within an individual or the group of individuals that was impacted by the event that are a result from the gun use in a specific inceptional chart. And if it's indicated in like the 11th house, we can be looking at how that impacts society or communities. And so we can look at how that house is going to have an impact on understanding how the community, society, or country might be influenced by activities that took place in a specific incident. And then we have the cadent houses, which are the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th. These are less powerful. They're representing transitions and indirect influences. And their impact on guns and gun use and gun violence represent areas where themes are more diffused and subtle. They're representing those parts of the experience that have kind of gone on into other areas. We could be talking about local issues, could be education. Like I'm just thinking about the third house and the ninth house. It could be around, like training, education, certification, health impacts, professions that require firearms. So this could be like security officers, police officers, security detail, things like that. We can see that when we're talking about the philosophical or the cultural debates around gun usages and whether we should restrict gun use or make it more open, or is it constitutional or is it not? Should states, have more say, or should the federal government? So these kinds of things are going to be relative in those houses. We can talk about hidden fears and criminal activities and psychological impacts of violence. So these are all kind of the cadent house themes and topics, and how those philosophically impact the use and reading of a chart, whether exceptional, natal, horary, or other kind of chart. So each type of house brings a unique perspective on firearms and explosions and the use of guns, and understanding how the angularity impacts those can give us a deeper insight into how guns and firearms are implicated in an individual's chart, or in a group's chart, a society, or in an event chart. I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to go deeper into each of the 12 houses in a separate video. So this, I just kind of wanted to cover the angularity. So again, we have succedent, cadent, and angular. They're represented in the way that they're presented in the chart, the top, the bottom, and each of the two sides of the chart. And I think that's it for now. We'll see you in one of the other videos in this series. Looking forward to connecting with you all again next time. Until then, keep your eye on the sky and make a wish upon a star.